Hello, reader. Thank you for joining us. This is the Christian Readers Community Podcast. On this podcast, we will be discussing with fellow readers and authors. You will never lack for good conversations and recommendations of Christian books. If you're a lover of literary works, fiction and non-fiction, then you have made the right stop here. Thank you for joining us again, and I hope you listen to every podcast that we get to put out for you. Thank you.
Mona is a beloved daughter of the king, her daddy in heaven. She has an inquisitive mind, frequently asking questions, which led to her career in nutrition and ultimately writing a book. Mona's day job is translating science into consumer-friendly messages for the nutrition and supplement industry. She grew up in North Dakota on her grandparents' farm where her love for sunflowers and the outdoors were born. She currently lives in Colorado, hiking and living the outdoor lifestyle. Mona enjoys giving back by volunteering with the 12-Step program and in guest services at her church. It is her dream to speak to the masses, sharing the experience, strength, and hope she has gained through this journey of breaking free and living loved.
Hello and welcome back to the Christian Readers Community. I'm Faith, and as usual, I'm back with another author, and I read this powerful book she wrote, and I can't wait for you to hear her voice. Welcome to the show, Mona Rosene.
Thank you so much, Faith. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. You published your first book, right?
Yes.
This book we want to talk about is your debut book, right?
Correct. Yes. First book ever.
Wow. I read this book and I was like, okay, you really wrote like a pro. This is because I've seen so many authors that say, okay, I think I've come a long way from my first book, and you see something as beautiful as what you wrote in your first book, but this one, I'm seeing something that this is what so many people, how am I going to put this? This is how good so many people are when they're writing their fourth or fifth book. But this seems to not be the case with you, rather. And I read this book, and first I had to ask myself, is this really a debut non-fiction? And
No.
I really, really learned so much from it. And wow, I'm glad I was blessed with reading the blessing of reading your book.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Those words are very kind, and it just really hits into my heart, and I'm so glad it helped you and it blessed you. And that's my biggest prayer when I wrote it, is that it touches people's hearts. So thank you for that.
Yeah, this is actually, for anyone listening to us right now, this is actually one of those books that will not leave you the same after reading. This is one book that really change your mind, change your thinking, and change even your body. Yes, yeah. I know you might be wondering.
Yeah.
You're wondering how could it be, but when you pick up this book and after hearing Mona speak today, you know the reason why I said so. So let's quickly go into your book, Hellbent and Heavenward. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, the book, came out of some frustration that I was experiencing, primarily in part about my faith and understanding who God really is versus the lies I may have told myself or the lies I may have heard. And then also struggling with a lot of issues I think that many women and some men will struggle with, like for me specifically, body image, some disordered eating, being perfectionist. So I thought about it. I was listening to an audio sample of a different book on a long road trip drive, thinking, should I buy this book to listen to? And I thought, I probably know 95% of what's in that book because I'm a dietitian, so I have that background. And my concern with some books like that are can be very helpful, but many of the books like that I've experienced don't give you the how. Like, how do you apply what you just read to your life? And I came across also some sermons that I've listened to just in my whole life, about, hey, that's a great sermon, but how do I apply that to my life in today's time, and any of my difficulties that I might be going through in my life? And so I wrote the book from that perspective, where each chapter has a reflection and an application, and about 3 questions each, just to get the reader thinking a little bit about what I had written in that chapter, and then how do you apply it? So this book also incorporates 12 steps of recovery, because that's also another journey that I've been on with growing up with an alcoholic father.
So one thing I really like about your book is how you wrote your personal stories, how you wrote, your own life experiences, how you could relate it to what you were writing. And that's one intriguing thing about this book you wrote, because there's really something that I like about nonfiction books, the ability to weave your story, your own personal story, something that can, make the readers feel like you can relate to what you're writing, that this is not just something you just studied and decided to pen it down, but this is something that you've experienced. Like I was telling you behind the mic that I am not really much of a fan of nonfiction books, but I feel like if I'm going to sit down to read a nonfiction book, then it better be worth my time. And one thing I love so much is stories. I really, really love stories, and I really liked the way you weaved your own stories to the topics you dealt with in your book. So tell us a little about your background, like the family you came from, and how it influenced you to the level where you finally, survived after. I mean, you said it took you 7 years after some, so I'll just allow you to tell the story and how you finally got to this place where you had to, write this book.
Yeah, I grew up in an alcoholic family. My dad was an alcoholic, and as a kid, I didn't know any different. And the interesting thing about the disease of alcoholism is that everybody is affected in the home. So, my mom, she did what she could and what she thought she was doing to protect my brother and I from any of my dad. And he was never violent at all. My dad was very much a perfectionist. He was a master plumber. He was amazing at his work, and that perfectionism also bled into his life and his personal life. So he would expect perfection from anything that he asked me to do or my brother to do. And that perfection played out in, simple things, from making sure the driveway was shoveled, and it was shoveled to his liking, and making sure the yard was taken care of to his liking, all of that kind of simple stuff, which then for me, I think as a child, you almost get a little sense of, oh my gosh, if I don't do it right, if I don't do it to my dad's liking, then I'm in trouble. And that was part of, I think, one of the 4 lies that I talk about in the book that imprisons people. For instance, these 4 lies that I talk about, which are perfection, punishment, performance, and permanence, meaning life will always be this way, are 4 lies that I think a lot of people can easily believe, and then that could keep them locked in prison for their whole life if they don't come to awareness. And these 4 lies were something that I lived in my household, when I was living with my parents, and then also that I took into my personal life when I was married, after I got divorced, when I've been, in college, all of that kind of stuff. It was very black and white. If I didn't do it right, then it was wrong. There was nothing in between. So, when I got divorced, I didn't realize just how much I was part of the problem. Everybody has their part in every relationship, in every situation. Everybody has their part. And I wasn't sure what my part was in my divorce. And then as I went through the years after my divorce and through some relationships that were very meaningful to me that ended, I realized I was the common denominator. And that's what ultimately led me to the doors of a 12-step program called Al-Anon. And it was in that program with just the love and the grace and the support from the group, and then ultimately my sponsor, that began to pull the scales off of my eyes, to where I realized what are some of my character defects that I have to ask God to remove, and then only controlling my part and only taking responsibility for my part, versus as a perfectionist and a people pleaser, you want to make sure that you take responsibility. You want to make sure everybody's happy. And so then you can be taking responsibility for situations or outcomes that aren't even your fault. And so that was about 7 years ago that I got into that program. And, it's a journey. It's never ending. I'm constantly learning. But what I'm grateful for is that I have much better awareness. I know when I may have wronged somebody and I can make amends very quickly. I know when, to the best of my ability, sometimes where I got to stop trying to control. I think that's another thing that especially, women growing up in an alcoholic family, or anybody growing up in an alcoholic family, they want to control the outcome so that there's peace in the household. And that is hard to take, to let go of control. Very hard.
So let's talk about a particular topic in your book. So, as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. I've seen so many people saying that this scripture isn't true, that you can think all you want, or some might even say, okay, do not think so highly of yourself, that you're gonna that pride, or so many controversial statements around this particular scripture. But you dealt with this about the mind. Talk to us about it.
One of the things that I realized, not only on my pursuit of really understanding the character of God and the nature of who he is, it's also understanding who I believed he was. And then where did those beliefs come from? And, the enemy is so good at just twisting any little truth into a lie or a half of lie. And because my experience growing up in an alcoholic family, I was very critical of myself, and I still can be very critical of myself. And my dad, I remember having a conversation with him, maybe about 5 or so years ago. And I remember I told him, I said, Dad, he could fix anything. He was so good at his craft. He could fix anything. And then he would also have this self-talk that was so extremely negative. He'd be like, why did you screw up on that? He would just discipline himself and yell at himself to himself. He's out in the garage talking to himself, going, why the heck did you screw that up? You know better than that. And I heard that as his daughter. I heard that. And I think one of the things that many people don't understand is that when we speak these words, whether they're negative or positive, in Philippians, it says to always focus on what is good and honorable and noble and loving. And then you think about how powerful words are, because God spoke the universe into existence. And so the power of your words are very serious. And I think people need to understand just how serious they are. So when you speak, always speak in kindness, especially to yourself. And I would hear him say that. And I think it's growing up in that unconsciously. I just was very critical, and I would berate myself and beat myself up over and over and over again for the littlest mistake, and not even looking at the good of the situation. So in that chapter, when I was talking about renewing your mind, in the Bible, in Romans, it talks about, don't be conformed to the things of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that is another area where I'm like, well, how do you do that? Because it doesn't go into detail, like step 1, 2, and 3. And that's when I just began doing a little bit of research. And as a scientist, I looked into some science, and I looked into quantum physics, which I am by no means a quantum physicist. That's very, very hard to understand. But what it does relate to is the power of your mind, or the power of your mind, the power of your thoughts, and the power of your words. And I think many people have met people who are extremely positive and things are just going, really well with them. And even if they do come upon something that they're struggling with, they're like, you know what? All is well. All is good. I'm doing what I can. God is doing the rest. And then there's half where the glass is always half empty, and they have like a rain cloud over their head all the time, and nothing is right. Nobody is nice, and everybody is mean to them. Everybody is doesn't like them. Nobody is ever kind to them. And it's interesting, if you really watch those behaviors, you can see that behavior and those words actually draw into them either the unkindness or the really, negative atmosphere. And then if you look at people who are really positive, they always have positive things happening to them, or the majority of the time. So that's just a nutshell of what this chapter covers. It covers a lot about, a little bit more about quantum. I think one of the great aspects of this chapter too is I had read a book a while ago, several years ago, by an author of Colbert. And he's a medical doctor and a Christian, and he talks about deadly emotions. And he was talking about just how, same thing I'm talking about, just how impactful your words are and trauma and stress are to the body from a health perspective. We know that stress is about 80% of all the illnesses that people have. And when he would see patients in his clinic, he would realize that there was some kind of a traumatic event, like if it was a woman, she went through divorce, something like that, and this traumatic event, it spiraled down with the way her thoughts were and the stress that it played on her body, and her body gets sick. And then when they finally realized how to shift their mindset and pray and be grateful. Gratitude is probably one of the best forms of medicine. Yes, traditional medicine is helpful too, but from a mind perspective, gratitude is amazing in what it does. So that's a nutshell of what that chapter is about. It's probably one of my favorite chapters because there's so much information there. And
there's something you said in that book. You said that the more you focus on negative things, that's the more, it increases. And I've seen it happening to me. I've seen it happening in other people's lives. When you're like, oh, I don't have something to eat today, and you realize that the problem continues, it gets worse. It doesn't make it better when you concentrate on your problems. Wow. Yes. The book is very powerful.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I've heard the saying many years ago about what you focus on enlarges. And when we are focused on our problems, then we're minimizing God. It's like we have a big, big God, and he's above everything. He's above our most difficult problem and difficult concern that we have. But when we're so laser focused on the problem and we forget that God is so much bigger, the problem becomes bigger. But when we actually be like, all right, God, I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to lay it at the cross to the best of my ability. And if I have to do it again in 5 more minutes, I'm going to do it again. But you are bigger than this problem, and you are bigger than this concern. And I know you've got it covered. Easier said than done, but it works,
Yeah, easier said than done. Okay, so let's talk about something else in your book. Okay, before then, I'd like to ask, will you write again, or was this supposed to be a one-time thing?
It's funny because I've had many people ask me that, and I have some topics for blogs that I haven't written yet, but I still have these topics that are kind of, swirling around in my mind. And just a friend of mine just asked me too, not long ago, what's the next book? So I don't know. I guess it'll depend on where God leads me, and what plans he's got. And if he has a really good topic, then yes, I'll definitely write again.
Okay. And who are your audience? Who did you write this book for?
Primarily women of faith. So if because of pretty much the first half of the chapter deals with a lot of issues that a lot of women can deal with. Like I mentioned earlier, the body image issues, as well as some eating disorders or disordered eating. Those are, two really big things that I've struggled with for my whole, since I can remember, probably since I was a teenager. And I'm in my mid 50s now, and it's getting better. It's getting easier. And it's only been, once since I've written the book. And then I work with a counselor also, which I highly recommend. Everybody, also see a counselor when needed. And then the second half of the book really plays into the science aspect, because as for me, as a scientist, I'm a nutrition scientist, the miracle of the body and the way God designed us just blows me away. And I wanted to reconcile a little bit. I actually have a chapter in the book called Reconciling God and Science. And I wanted to reconcile that because, so many people lean only towards science, and then they don't believe in God. And then there's others who believe in God, but they really don't understand science, or they think some science is kind of wacky. But God created science, and he created our bodies, and he created our bodies to heal, and he created our minds to heal. And so the book is really for, primarily women of faith. And then any, men can also get something out of it too. I've had several men read it, and they really enjoyed it as well. And then one other aspect too is, even if somebody doesn't know God yet, I think this book can help the people who don't even know God yet, because it's about my journey of who he is. He is a God of love, period. And then there's a few chapters in there about how do you let God love you, and then how does God also like you.
I was listening to a song a few days ago, and the song was like, okay, when my heart is breaking, will you hear me when I call? So this book will actually, I believe, is going to, because so many people have this question, does God love me? What do I need to do to earn his love, to get his attention? So in this book, I'm glad that you also, teached, or you talked about the, loving God and being loved by God, being loved by God, primarily being loved by God. And, that particular chapter would help anyone to understand that so many things that we're doing to get God's attention is not necessary for that purpose. But not that they are not good, not that we won't be doing a good thing if we do them, but if we're doing it solely for the purpose of earning God's love, then we are getting it wrong, or maybe misunderstanding the whole concept. And this is really the reason I believe that anyone who picks up this book, by the time you're done reading, it will change your mind, your mentality, and your body. Really, the book is a powerful book. So I'll more, but but we're almost out of time. So I would like to ask if you would, like to read an excerpt from your book for us.
Oh my goodness. Let me see if I can find this one part. It goes on to what you were talking about with regards to letting God love you and letting him like you. So I will read from page 71 about letting God love you. So in 2018, I went on a mission trip to Cambodia, and one day we finished our work early, so our host took us to Crater Lake. It's a volcanic freshwater crater lake. We went to go swimming. We found a dock all to ourselves and proceeded to jump off the dock and play like kids. It was extremely refreshing to the body, mind, and spirit. At one point, I was treading water and I looked up at the dock to see our host sitting on the bench with a sweet smile on his face. And as he watched us play like children and enjoying God's creation, I thought, is it really that simple? Is this how God loves us? He just hangs out watching his children play and he beams with love and joy. And I came to the conclusion that yes, it really is that easy. And God rejoices over us with singing, which is from Zephaniah 3:17. So be still and know that I am God. I think that's just another aspect of really just realizing we don't have to perform for God to love us. We don't have to be perfect for God to love us. I mean, if you look at it, Jesus came to those who are lost and broken. And that's all we have to do is we just got to sit back and just say his name and he'll be there. He'll be right there.
Be still and know that I am God. It's a beautiful scripture that, lets you know that truly you have a good father in God. And I really love the way you reference God. You called him my daddy. Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry I'm speaking so much about this book. I'm just so I was really, really taken by the book, and I'm glad. Like I said before, I'm grateful for the blessing of reading this book, and I hope you keep writing because I'd really love to, read more books from you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I will definitely consider that, and maybe I'll just sit down this afternoon and write a blog.
That would also be fine. So before we go, how if someone wants to reach out to you, say social media, subscribe to your go to your website or subscribe to your mailing list, how would you be able to do that?
They can go to hellbentandheavenward.com and they can buy the book there. They can subscribe to a mailing list there. They can do anything that they want there. And then I'm also on Facebook at Hellbent and Heavenward, and you can find me there. I haven't posted a whole lot on social media, but I will begin to post a little bit more. So those are the two primary places to go. So hellbentandheavenward.com or Facebook by the same name, Hellbent and Heavenward.
Okay. Yeah, we've used up our time. So would you want to say anything before we anything else before we go?
No, I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you and to share some information about this book, and if readers have any questions, they can, get on the mailing list or even email me through hellbentandheavenward.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions and talk to people personally.
All right, so you've heard it from Mona, and yeah, she'll be happy to reach out to you. And thank you so much, Mona. This has been a wonderful conversation. I mean, you speak wonderfully like your book.
Thank you so much, Faith. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So everyone, this is where we're going to be drawing the curtain, and Mona's book is available on Amazon. Is your book also available to other platforms, or is it exclusive to Amazon?
Right now it's exclusive to Amazon, so they can go there to get it.
Okay, so you've heard it from Mona, and so you can check out Hellbent and Heavenward by Mona Rosene. So, and I believe you won't be the same after reading the book. And let me reiterate what I said earlier, that this book will change your mind, your mentality, and your body. And when you read it, you realize that, what we just discussed here is just the tip of the iceberg. If you like to know more, if you like to get more information, just go to her website and read about her, subscribe to her mailing list so I get updated when she releases a new book. But most importantly, get this book. Get it for a loved one, get it for a friend, get it for anyone, and get it for yourself. You're not going to regret reading this book. All right, everyone, thanks for listening, and until I come your way again next time, stay safe, stay blessed, and bye-bye, everyone.